The house at the end of the street didn't look like it belonged to anyone. Its paint was cracked and peeling, shutters hanging loose like broken eyelids, and the porch sagged so badly it looked ready to collapse. The mailbox read only a faded, crooked number, 6. Derek cut the engine of his Honda, and the four friends sat in silence for a moment, staring. "This looks like a murder house," Mia muttered, hugging her hoodie around her. Jordan grinned. "Perfect for broke college kids then." Kyle, always the loudest of them, shoved his door open and slapped the roof of the car. "Stop whining. Cheapest rent within 3 miles of campus." We scored. But even as they hauled boxes across the sagging porch, Derek couldn't shake the feeling that the house was watching him. The landlord was already waiting inside. He was tall, lean, with skin weathered like old leather and gray hair combed stiffly back. His eyes, though sharp and restless, didn't seem to blink often enough. "You must be the students," he said flatly, holding a jangling ring of keys. Derek, Mia, Jordan, Kyle. They nodded nervously. "You'll find the place is old, but sturdy," he went on. "Use any room you like. Just remember one thing." He stopped at the top of the staircase, pointing to the far end of the narrow hallway. There, half hidden in shadow, was a single door. It was heavier than the others, its wood darker, its brass knob dulled with age. "That room is locked," the landlord said firmly. His voice dropped low. "You are never to open it. Do you understand?" The friends glanced at each other. Jordan smirked. "What's in there, bodies?" The landlord didn't smile. His gaze lingered on each of them in turn. "Do not open it," he repeated. His tone had an edge now, sharp as a blade. Without another word, he pressed the house keys into Derek's hand, turned, and walked briskly down the stairs. The front door clicked shut a moment later. The four of them stood in silence. "Well," Mia said finally, "that wasn't creepy at all." Kyle chuckled, swaggering down the hall. "What's the big deal? Probably just mold. Or asbestos." He tapped the locked door with his knuckle. Thud. "Bet he's hiding some weird taxidermy collection in there." "Don't," Mia snapped, swatting his arm. "Seriously, leave it." Kyle raised his hands in mock surrender. "Relax, Mom. I'm not opening it yet." They laughed nervously and carried on unpacking, but the unease lingered. That night, after the last of the boxes were shoved into corners and the house had fallen quiet, Derek lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling. His room faced the hallway, and even with his door half closed he could see it, that locked door at the end, sitting in darkness. It made the whole hall feel narrower, like it was waiting. He must have drifted off, because the next thing he heard was a soft creak. His eyes snapped open. Light flickered faintly in the hallway, the beam of a phone flashlight. "Kyle." Derek sat up, heart pounding, as Kyle crouched at the end of the hall, jiggling something in the doorknob. "Are you serious?" Derek hissed. Kyle shot him a grin over his shoulder. "Relax. Just want to see what the old man's hiding." With a sharp pop, the lock gave way. The door groaned open, an icy draft spilling out into the hall. "Dude," Derek whispered, throat tight. The room beyond was pitch black. No windows, no furniture, just endless dark. Their weak phone lights didn't seem to reach the far wall. The shadows felt heavy, thick, pressing against them. Kyle leaned in, peering deeper. Empty. But Derek could have sworn something shifted in the dark. A ripple, like a tall shadow, retreating just out of sight. Kyle shrugged and let the door hang slightly ajar. "See? Nothing. You worry too much." He padded back to his room, chuckling under his breath. Derek sat frozen in bed long after the hall went dark again. He couldn't take his eyes off that open sliver of doorway. At first, there was nothing, just silence. Then faintly a sound. The unmistakable drag of fingernails across wood. From inside the room. The next morning, the house felt different. It wasn't obvious at first. The sunlight streamed through the dirty windows, catching the dust in the air. Mia made coffee in the cramped kitchen. Jordan argued with Derek over who got the bigger closet, and Kyle, smug as ever, acted like nothing had happened. But Derek couldn't forget the sound he'd heard. The scraping. He hadn't imagined it. He knew he hadn't. By the third night, things had started. Derek woke to the sensation of cold air brushing across his face. He sat up, shivering, and looked at his window. It was shut tight. His eyes drifted to the hallway. The upstairs light was off, but he could see it, the dark outline of the door, still ajar. The draft was coming from there. He pulled his blanket tighter, trying to ignore it, when he heard it again. A sound so faint, he thought at first it was his own breathing. Derek, his name, whispered from the darkness. He clamped his hands over his ears, heart slamming against his ribs. He didn't sleep again that night. The next morning at breakfast, Mia slammed her mug onto the table. "Okay, seriously, which one of you was whispering outside my door last night?" The three boys stared at her. "No one," Derek said quickly. "Don't lie. I heard it clear as day. My name." Over and over. Her hands trembled as she lifted the mug again. It wasn't funny. Jordan frowned. "I heard something too. Thought it was the wind." Kyle scoffed, though his eyes were rimmed red, like he hadn't slept. "You guys are being paranoid. Old houses make noise. It's all in your heads. Then close the damn door," Mia snapped. Kyle's smirk faltered. He didn't answer. That night, Jordan woke to find himself standing in the hallway. His body felt stiff, his head heavy. He blinked, disoriented. He hadn't remembered leaving his bed. But there he was, feet bare against the cold wood, standing directly in front of the open door. The darkness inside the room seemed to stretch forever. He didn't know how long he stared before he finally stumbled back to his bed, drenched in sweat. By the end of the week, the house had turned against them. Mia's mirror fogged on its own, though no one had used hot water. When she wiped it clean, a single word smeared across the glass in condensation. "Come." Derek felt something brush his ankle as he got into bed, though nothing was there when he kicked the covers back. And Jordan, pale and exhausted, confessed in a low voice at breakfast, "I think something's in there. Watching me. Every night, I see it. A shadow. Just standing." The four of them sat in silence, no one daring to laugh it off this time. The house seemed to listen. That night, the door slammed shut on its own. The sound shook the whole hallway, rattling the picture frames on the walls. When they rushed out of their rooms, the door was locked again, the knob ice cold to the touch. "See," Mia whispered, eyes wide. "It doesn't want to be open." But Derek couldn't stop shaking, because he knew he'd seen it slam from inside the room. For the next few nights, none of them slept well. It wasn't just the house creaking or the pipes groaning. It was the footsteps. They came at odd hours, slow, deliberate steps, pacing the upstairs hallway. Derek would lie awake in bed, heart hammering, staring at the thin line of light under his door. A shadow would pass by, blotting it out for just a second before moving on. But every time he worked up the courage to yank the door open, the hallway was empty, silent. Mia was the first to break. One morning, she emerged from her room pale, her eyes swollen from crying. She pulled the sleeve of her sweater up just far enough for them to see the bruises, for dark finger-shaped marks wrapped around her wrist. "I was asleep," she whispered, voice trembling. "Something grabbed me. It tried to pull me out of bed." Kyle scoffed at first, though his voice cracked. "You probably did it yourself. Night terrors. People thrash in their sleep. Don't you dare," Mia snapped. Tears brimmed in her eyes. "Don't you dare tell me I did this to myself." She stormed off, leaving the three of them staring at each other in tense silence. Jordan spoke first. "She's not lying. Last night, I woke up and someone was sitting at the edge of my bed." Derek's stomach twisted. "Someone. I thought it was Kyle at first. But when I sat up, it was taller. No face. Just a shadow." His voice cracked. It didn't move. It just sat there. By the end of that week, Kyle wasn't scoffing anymore. He'd stopped joking, stopped smiling. His once cocky grin was gone, replaced by vacant stares and twitching hands. He spent hours sitting outside the locked door, whispering under his breath. One night Derek caught him leaning into the crack between the door and the frame, murmuring like he was speaking to someone on the other side. "What the hell are you doing?" Derek hissed, grabbing his shoulder. Kyle jerked back, eyes wide and glassy. For a moment, Derek swore his pupils looked stretched, too large, swallowing almost all of the blue in his irises. "It talks to me," Kyle whispered. His lips trembled. "It says it wants me, but it can't come out unless I let it." Derek's blood ran cold. "Kyle, stop. You're scaring me." But Kyle only smiled, a thin, broken smile Derek had never seen before. "It already knows your name too." That night, Mia screamed. The boys burst into her room to find her standing in the corner, shaking violently, pointing toward the wall. There was someone," she stammered, "standing in my room, right there, in the corner, watching me." But the corner was empty, except for one thing. On the wall, faint but unmistakable, was the outline of a handprint. Long fingers, far longer than any human's, pressed deep into the plaster as though burned there. From that point, none of them felt safe. The whispers grew louder, sometimes chanting all four of their names in voices that sounded almost familiar. The bruises spread across their bodies. The footsteps no longer stayed in the hallway. Sometimes they creaked across the bedroom floors when no one was standing there. And Kyle was slipping away fastest of all. He stopped eating, stopped talking to them. They would wake up at night to find him already awake, sitting cross-legged in the hall, staring at the locked door. The thing from the room wasn't trapped anymore. It was in the house, and it was growing bolder. By the fourth week, the house had taken something from each of them. Mia's arms were covered in bruises she couldn't explain. Jordan looked like a ghost of himself, pale, sleep-deprived, jumping at every sound. Derek was exhausted, wrung out from listening to footsteps crawl across the hallway every single night. And Kyle was barely human anymore. He muttered constantly, sometimes in a language none of them recognized. At times, they'd find him scratching strange symbols into the walls with his fingernails until they bled. It was Derek who finally said it. "We need to know what this place is." That afternoon, they sat in the university library with stacks of yellowed newspapers and bound archives. The old librarian gave them a wary look when Derek asked about house number 6, as if she'd heard the name before. And she had. The first article was dated 1952. Student murders 3. Hangs self in rental home. Henry Black, a sophomore, had lived in house number 6 with 3 roommates. According to police reports, Henry had been hearing voices at night, the shadows in the walls, as he called them. He butchered his roommates in their sleep and carved strange markings into their chests. Days later, he was found hanging in the upstairs hallway, rope nailed into the very ceiling beam they walked under every day. The note he left behind was just 4 words, scrawled across the wall in his own blood. "It comes from the dark." Mia shivered as Derek read it aloud. The next article was from 1968. A family who moved and lasted only 3 months. The parents disappeared one night. Their children were found wandering the street, crying, saying they'd seen shadows moving in the house. Then 1977. A group of frat boys renting for the semester. One vanished without a trace. The others left in a hurry, refusing to talk about it. Then 1994. Then 2008. Then 2016. Each story was nearly the same. Tenants moved into house number 6. One by one, they vanished or died. The landlord never faced charges. He always found new renters. "It's a pattern," Jordan whispered, eyes wide as he flipped through the clippings. "Every group, every time. Someone opens that damn door, and it starts all over again." Mia rubbed her arms, her hands trembling. Then we're next. When they returned home that night, the air in the house felt heavier, thicker, like it was waiting for them. Kyle wasn't in his room. They searched every corner, the kitchen, the basement, even outside in the overgrown yard. No sign of him. Then Derek saw it. The door at the end of the hall, open. His stomach dropped. "Don't," Mia whispered, clutching his arm. "Don't go in." But Derek couldn't stop himself. He inched closer. The room was still pitch black, swallowing the light. His phone flashlight flickered weakly as he held it inside. There, on the floor, lay Kyle's phone. Its screen was cracked, recording app still running. Derek picked it up with shaking hands, pressed play, and the hallway filled with sound. Heavy breathing. Kyle's voice whispering, "Yes." I'll let you out. And then a second voice. Low. Inhuman. Words drawn out like a growl. You already did. The recording ended in a scream. Kyle was gone. And they all knew deep down he wasn't coming back. The house was silent after Kyle vanished. Not empty, never empty, but silent in a way that pressed against their chests. Every creak of the floorboards made them flinch. Every draft of cold air felt like breath against their skin. The three of them, Derek, Mia, and Jordan, huddled in the living room, boxes pulled into a crude barricade against the hallway. The locked door upstairs was shut again, but it didn't matter. They all knew the thing inside wasn't confined anymore. We need to call the cops, Mia whispered, her voice shaking. We need to get out. But what could they say? Our friend disappeared into a shadow? The house is alive? No one would believe them. Derek knew it. And even if they left, part of him wondered, would it follow? That night, Jordan didn't come downstairs. Derek and Mia crept up together, every step a scream in their ears. Jordan's door was wide open, his bed empty, his sheets soaked through, dark and heavy with water that dripped onto the floorboards. The closet door creaked open by itself. Inside, Jordan's phone lay in the corner, camera still recording. Derek picked it up with trembling hands and hit play. The screen was almost entirely dark, but Jordan's face appeared for a moment, pale and frantic. He whispered into the camera, "It's in here with me." The screen lurched as he screamed, the camera falling to the floor. For just a split second, the image caught it, something tall, blacker than the shadows around it, dragging him toward the open door at the end of the hall. Then static. Mia dropped the phone. Her knees gave out, her hands covering her mouth to muffle her sobs. Jordan was gone. The house grew bolder, with only two left. Whispers followed them everywhere, sometimes in their own voices, sometimes mimicking Kyle or Jordan. At night, the shadows stretched across the walls, reaching with impossible hands. Mia stopped sleeping entirely. And then one night, Derek woke to the sound of her footsteps creaking across the hall. "Mia," he whispered, stepping out of his room. She was standing in front of the door at the end of the hall. The door was wide open, the black inside of the room yawning like a mouth. "Mia, don't," Derek begged, his throat dry. "Don't go in." She turned her head slowly toward him, eyes glassy, lips trembling. "They're calling me." And before he could reach her, she stepped inside. The door slammed shut. Derek clawed at it, screaming her name, pounding his fists against the wood until they bled. The door wouldn't budge. And then silence. Mia was gone. Derek stopped fighting after that. He stopped eating, stopped trying to sleep. He sat in the living room with the recorder from Kyle's phone, whispering into it. "If anyone finds this," he rasped, voice hollow, "don't open the door in house number 6. No matter what. Once you do, it doesn't stop. It doesn't let go." He looked toward the hallway, where the locked door now stood wide open. The dark inside seemed to pulse, deeper and deeper, like a tunnel with no end. And then he heard it, his friends' voices, Mia, Jordan, even Kyle, calling his name from inside the darkness. "Derek, come with us." Tears burned his eyes as his grip on the recorder tightened. His voice broke into a whisper. "I'm sorry." He stood, walked down the hallway. The shadows rippled in welcome. The recorder clattered to the floor, still running, as Derek disappeared into the black. For a moment, there was only silence. Then the faint sound of footsteps returned, slow, heavy, moving closer to the recorder. The file ended there. House number 6 stood quiet at the end of the street, paint peeling, windows dark, waiting for the next tenants.